Na'eem Offord is sticking with Ohio State. Here's why. Oh boy, here we go again. Na'eem Offord, flip target for Auburn, Oregon, Alabama, pretty much anybody who can get him to get around to their campus at all. Well, about a month ago, I don't even know if it was a month ago, the big talk was Alabama and how he had taken 3 visits to Alabama within 10 days. Well, nobody wanted to talk about how one of those was a 7-on-7 tournament, and the whole fact that Na'eem was just taking visits. I am one of those people who at one point sent out a message about Na'eem Offord, and hearing somebody say that he didn't think Na'eem Offord was completely committed. Well, like Na'eem Offord does, he got on social media, quote tweeted me, and talked about how silly that talk was. I don't remember exactly what he said, but basically telling everybody that that was silly talk and he was completely locked in, not going anywhere. Well, apparently other people haven't learned their lesson from seeing what I did. And at the end of the day, I never really thought Na'eem Offord was going to be decommitting from Ohio State. I was just putting information out there that somebody else had said. Of course, everybody took it in a different way, but we don't need to rehash that whole situation. What's happening now is Auburn is gaining confidence in saying that Na'eem Offord will be flipping to Ohio State. But one thing you have to consider is the way that the Auburn beat kind of works and operates. Every beat kind of works and operates in different ways because every fan base operates, reacts, however you want to call it. They all have their own ways of responding and engaging with content as well. Well, Auburn is very much known as a school that gets excited when they flip recruits, excited when maybe they don't get the recruit at first, but then they get them later on. That is one of the reasons why Malik Autry is such an impactful piece for Auburn, is because if Ohio State flips Malik Autry, that would be a huge mark against Auburn because they are known for flipping the players, not other schools coming in and flipping them. Well, one of the reporters for Auburn 24/7, and my goal here is not to come down on the Auburn beat and say they're terrible and they don't know what they're doing. This game is played by every beat. You know, what do fans respond to and what do fans talk about the most? What gets the most clicks? And you can talk about how maybe they're clickbaiting other people, but at the end of the day, like if you've worked in media at all, you recognize that your fans, maybe not your fans, but the fans of your school, they want to read certain kind of content in a certain kind of way. Maybe you don't go flowers and sunshine the entire time, but you know that the fans read this certain kind of content. Well, Auburn apparently they love to talk about flips and how many flips they can possibly get. So of course, 5-star in the state of Alabama, Christian Clement, and again, I'm not speaking poorly of Christian Clement here. I'm just talking about everything that's going on. 5-star Ohio State cornerback commit Na'eem Offord says Auburn and Oregon are the two schools in the mix the most for him right now and has a return visit in mind. Quote, Freeze tells me I'm an Auburn guy, telling me I'm one of his top 10 players he wants, end quote. Well, people took that tweet from early on in the day and kind of ran with it and said, oh, Na'eem Offord, he's concerned about flipping, even so much so that Bill Kurelic had to address the rumors on Bucknuts Morning 5. And as Bill Kurelic normally does, he doesn't really give you a solid answer. He says, yeah, Na'eem Offord could flip. I don't really see it happening, but it sure could happen. And as to be expected, he doesn't want to talk about how the 24/7 reporter from his own company is doing a bad job or he necessarily disagrees with him. But in Bill Kurlick's way, he essentially said he doesn't believe that Na'eem Offord will flip. And he even wrote that on the message board where he said, yes, there are rumors out there, but he's not projecting that to happen. If you're on 24/7, I don't like to send screenshots of the message boards, but if you have a message board subscription with 24/7, you can go read what Bill Kurelic said there. Well, in addition to the Auburn media talking about it, Ohio State's media has picked this up a little bit too. And in an article written by Eric, Evan Massey on sportsillustrated.com for the Ohio State site, he writes Ohio State 5-star quarterback might choose to decommit. Na'eem Offord screenshotted that, said, y'all get on the internet and say anything, facepalm, SMH emoji, basically calling out Evan, just as he has other reporters saying, listen, not flipping, not going anywhere. I'm locked in with Ohio State. So that would lead people to say, well, JR, why in the world would Na'eem Offord take all of these visits, do all of these things? Why would he talk about how he's still considering other schools? Why did Jeremiah Smith do it? Right? I mean, Na'eem Offord, he's obviously not the number one recruit in the nation like Jeremiah Smith was, but he's a very coveted cornerback, especially one for schools in Alabama. And for him to accept visits from these other schools, he gets paid. And so, do I like it as an Ohio State fan that he's going to these other schools, taking visits? Not necessarily. It doesn't make me feel great. It doesn't give me any reassurance. I'd obviously much rather have somebody like Devin Sanchez or Tavian St. Clair who, it's just nose to the ground and do all your work and, can't wait for Ohio State. But at the end of the day, if you listen to many of these Auburn reporters, they're talking about, well, Na'eem Offord could flip if Ryan Day gets fired. If Ryan Day doesn't beat Michigan. If Ryan Day doesn't win a national championship. I mean, how asinine of a belief is that? Auburn is nowhere near the playoff this year. They're not going to the playoff. It's not going to happen. Auburn is a mediocre SEC program. They're not going to the playoff. And so to insinuate that Ohio State, if they lose one game or if they lose one playoff game, Na'eem Offord is going to say, sayonara, Ohio State, I'm going to Auburn. 7-5 sounds much better. It's just completely ridiculous. But this is also the kind of content that Hugh Freeze gives out to these reporters very often. I don't have the clip of it because I don't want to get in trouble with YouTube and putting somebody else's content on the page because YouTube doesn't always like it when you do that. But Auburn Daily, I think it's the Top Button podcast. Charles, I believe his name is. I'll link the video in the description. I have it. I just need to link it. But he came out and said that when Na'eem Offord was on his visit, I think this was very, very early on in the podcast. So you won't have to listen for long. But when Na'eem Offord was on his visit, Hugh Freeze talked to the reporters, which I don't know very many coaches that talk to reporters in the middle of official visits of kids, but he talked to the reporters and basically told them, write it down, Na'eem Offord will go to Auburn. And that's what the reporters had said to them. So when you combine the fact that Auburn fans love to hear about flips and a coach that is very confident that he is going to flip players and writers who are trying to put out content that the fans of the school read, this is how you get stories like this. This is how you get people coming up with these ideas that, Na'eem Offord could flip to Ohio or could flip from Ohio State to Auburn. Well, you want to know another player that they're talking about right now? The same guy, Christian Clement, is talking about. He's talking about how Zion Grady could flip to Auburn and how he could no longer go to Ohio State for the same reasons. If Ryan Day gets fired, maybe Larry Johnson isn't at Ohio State anymore. All of these other reasons. But at the end of the day, like I said, are you really going to go to Ohio State that loses one playoff game for Auburn 7-5, 8-4 at best? I mean, they're not sniffing the playoffs this year. It's just preposterous. And you have to think about how many flip targets these Auburn people are putting out there. Again, I'm not going to show you the exact content because it's behind a paywall. So I don't feel like I should just be able to screenshot everything and send it to you. But they put together lists of like 10 players that could be on flip watch, as they call it. And I mean, if Auburn is able to flip 10 players in this cycle, more power to them. It's pretty awesome. But I just don't see it happening. You know, Ohio State, they put out Mick Walker with On3. He puts out his next 5 players to commit to Ohio State almost weekly, almost bi-weekly in June and July. And even those lists are kind of interesting to see because commitment dates change and stuff like that. But they're not exactly bad, but, you know, Ohio State fans love to get the boom. They love to get the commitment, so they read it and think about, hey, who's coming up? Who could commit to Ohio State? Same thing with Auburn fans. They love the idea of a flip. That's what their coach raves about. That's what their coach talks about. We're going to get this guy. We're going to flip this guy. You know who else they've talked about is going to flip to Auburn? Juju Lewis. That was a big one for a while. Juju Lewis is going to flip to Auburn. Juju Lewis is no longer going to be at USC. Last time I checked, still committed to USC. Who was the other kid? Deuce Knight, the Notre Dame quarterback commit. Deuce Knight's going to come to Auburn. Deuce Knight has had a really big commitment to, or not commitment, has had a really good visit, and he's on commit watch to come to Auburn. He's going to flip from Notre Dame. Talk about that stuff. I mean, they throw a lot of these names out there. Now, could Na'eem Offord flip? Of course. Anybody can flip. But when you actually take a look at the Auburn media and what kind of content they like to put out there and what kind of content their fans like to read and what kind of stuff the coach says to the media, it makes sense. They're going to put this information out there. But Na'eem Offord's not going to flip. Na'eem Offord loves Ohio State. Na'eem Offord's dad calls Tim Walton the OG. He talks about it on Twitter. Go search him talking about OG Tim Walton. And at the end of the day, Na'eem Offord wants to play with Devin Sanchez. I mean, this recruitment is not just a recruitment for Ohio State, but Devin Sanchez and his parents are recruiting Na'eem Offord as well. Could Oregon make a play? Sure, maybe. But I view Na'eem Offord the same way that I viewed Jeremiah Smith. We're going to continue to get this conversation again and again and again because it's just Na'eem Offord is that coveted of a player. Maybe he's not as coveted as Jeremiah Smith because he's not the number 1 player, but he's a very coveted player, and Na'eem Offord is getting money for these visits just like any other recruit does. And so he's taking them. He has every right to, but that doesn't mean he's flipping, and you're going to continue to hear about this chatter. But just like with Jeremiah Smith, as long as Brian Hartline is at Ohio State, he's coming to Ohio State. As long as Tim Walton is at Ohio State, Na'eem Offord is coming to Ohio State. The Alabama doors are wide open. Ohio State is going down to Alabama. They're getting Zion Grady. They're getting Na'eem Offord, and they might just flip Malik Autry. I wouldn't put the chances super high for them to flip Malik Autry, but it's certainly a possibility to happen. Thanks everybody for watching. Do appreciate it. Please do like and subscribe. Have a good one.